So hopefully everybody should be able to see the Google, the PowerPoint presentation and the um, browser in the background, which I'll be switching to as we kind of go through. All right, so um, this is going to be about 30-minute webinar on Google Ads for recruiters. And what we're essentially going to cover is how recruiters can use Google Ads to find new business. And we're going to cover these 5 key components. So just as a quick overview before we get started, Google Ads, as I'm sure many of you know, probably all of you know, are the ads that appear at the top of search results for many different types of searches. They typically appear, they're the first thing people see, and they, in searches like this, they even take up the vast majority of the screen. So they're quite valuable real estate. But the nature of advertising is that many people will skip them. Many people will sort of discount the ads. They're not are they as valuable as these positions? And there's a lot of questions people have about how you can actually use these ads to grow your business. Interesting thing is that obviously there are lots of recruiters who are clearly showing up in many different searches. So they have figured something out. And the question is, what are they doing? So let's discuss that topic now. So Google Ads is complicated. There's no way around that. It's not something that you're going to probably perfectly understand after one webinar, but it is good to understand the basics so you can know sort of what you need to learn in order to really get up to the level that's required to execute a successful campaign. So a Google Ads campaign has the 5 key components. Keywords. Those are basically the words that you are targeting for people to, so that when people search a specific set of keywords, they will see your ads. The next thing is your ad copy. So, this essentially, what you see here, this is the ad copy. What is the messaging you're trying to convey to someone to encourage them to click on your ads? Or in some cases, discourage them from clicking on your ads, which we'll talk about in a second. The landing page. So, the landing page is is a term that I think a lot of people not always sure what it means, but a landing page is just any page that somebody goes to and then lands on your website, meaning the first page they see. So your landing page could be your home page, like it is in this case for this company, or it could be, a more specific inner page, like it is in this particular case. So it's really just the first page somebody sees. Follow-up. So, once you get someone on your page, you're encouraging to take some sort of action, which we'll talk about. And then, they do that action. What do you do to follow up with them? That's very important. And the last thing, the right mindset. So, I'm not going to get all spiritual on you or anything like that. The right mindset in this case is understanding that this is complicated. If you think you're not going to turn on a campaign and run it very profitably right away, there's going to have to be a lot of testing and optimization that takes place over time. And you may need to really rethink some of your assumptions about how your customers are going to interact with your website. And so it is important to understand that it's an ongoing process that will typically evolve if you're doing it right. So let's get into each topic a little more detail. So keywords is the first topic. So when you set up a Google Ads campaign, you're going to be selecting certain keywords that you're going to be targeting. You can see some kind of basic screenshots here of what the interface looks like, for one of our clients. And the question you're really asking is, what are the keywords that potential clients use when they are looking to hire in your target market? And there's a bunch of sort of related questions you need to think about when you're picking these keywords. The first is the client versus candidate dilemma, which is that no matter what keywords you use, the majority of those searches will be coming from candidates. And there's not too much you can do about that. That is just the nature of search. We find anywhere between 80 to 90% of these searches are from candidates. And so you're going to have to just acknowledge the fact that there will be people who are searching with these keywords that are not in your target market. That's the nature of advertising. The one thing that you can do to kind of minimize this problem is use what's called demographic targeting. I'm not going to get into that topic too much because it's a bit complicated, but the idea there is that Google knows things about some of its users, such as their age, the size of the company they work for, whether they're in a decision-making role. It's pretty surprising and a little bit scary what they can sometimes tell. And you can use what are called bid adjustments to change how much you're bidding on keywords for different demographics. So for example, if you know that somebody is, labeled by Google as like senior management, you might say, I want to pay more for them to see an ad. And if somebody say in their early 20s, you want to pay less for them to see your ads. And that's one way you can kind of show your ads to more people who are clients and fewer people who are candidates, even with the same keywords. So that concept of bid adjustments is important. So acknowledging though that there's no perfect solution to this, you're going to be showing your ads to some clients and some candidates. You have to think about, okay, still, what are the keywords I actually want to use? And here's where there's a problem probably with your intuition. And what do I mean by that? It's not just a problem with your intuition, it's probably just a problem with the limits of brainstorming, which is that there's not really a way to know in advance what keywords are going to be successful for you or what are not. Like you might think that, adding the word headhunter to, your search is very important, or you might think that, staffing firm is not going to work for you because it's, might denote something to, say blue collar. But without testing, you will never really know the answer. So what we always recommend is people take a very broad approach at first, and essentially put in as many keywords as they can think of in as many different combinations as possible and see what the data says. What are people clicking on, but also then what are people converting with and the quality of those leads. So it's all these different factors that go into ultimately saying which keywords are good and which are not. And then slowly over time, turning off the keywords that are not effective, even if maybe they are generating clicks, and perhaps even increasing the bids on keywords that are effective so that you're shown higher up in the search results and more frequently. We have some of our clients who start off with lists of over 100,000 keywords, which sounds crazy, but when you think about the different ways you can combine all these words, the lists quickly get pretty big. For example, you can say, Toronto recruiter, biotech, Toronto recruiter, biotech recruiter, Toronto headhunting agency. There's like just all these different ways you can say the same thing. And because we don't really know what people are going to do in advance, you kind of just should try everything. And that sort of leads to the last point, the necessity of testing, which is something I kind of already mentioned, but it is important. You can't run a campaign with 100,000 keywords over time, but you can use your data to figure out which ones should remain in your sort of ad campaign and which ones should be eventually turned off. And what you'll find is that, after we say about 2 to 6 months, you will have a core set of perhaps 100, perhaps 50, maybe even only 25 key, keywords that, make money for you and that you can leave profitably on. And the rest, will typically be paused or removed from your campaign. So that's how you kind of need to, a bunch of different considerations you need to make when thinking about what are the keywords you're going to use in your campaign. So the next thing is ad copy, right? So these are, as you know, these are the text, the headline Google Ads has. They call these are called descriptions. There's different, obviously links depending on where you appear, But the clear purpose, obviously, is to make yourself appealing to your target audience. And this, again, is where the client versus candidate dilemma comes in. And it's another way that we can make sure that we get clients clicking or more clients clicking and fewer candidates clicking. And it's really making it clear that this is about, in your case, making sure that your ads are for people who are hiring, not people who are looking for a job. And if you'll see in some of these samples, some of these people do this quite well and some don't. Need talent fast, access our deep candidate pool. Right away, you realize this is clearly for someone hiring. Hopefully they're probably trying to discourage candidates from clicking. Find success with headhunters though. We're not headhunters, we just work with them. I mean, I have no clue what that even means, which is its own problem, but it's clearly not going to dissuade candidates from clicking on it. Your sales growth partner, capitalize on your market's pent up demand, the right sales talents on your team. They're going after clients, I would say, but is it clear enough? Probably not. And you can kind of see that, throughout that there's varying levels of quality of this ad copy. Here's an example: senior executive positions. Our executive career center contains expert insights on hiring trends. Again, who's that for? Who knows, really? So you can really see that there's a variety. There's not always not everyone here is doing the right thing, but you can definitely see that on average, people are trying to weed out candidates from clicking because, you probably can't profitably find candidates through Google Ads. As the last one, as an example of who knows what this is, we'll share your unique story through employment branding with our creative flair. Like, who is this for? Who really knows, right? So you'll see that, like, just looking through these ads, you'll find a lot of problems with ad copy. And actually going back quickly, talking about the effectiveness of like keywords and making sure you target properly, you'll see here that not everyone's doing this right either. Recruiting services in Mexico, I'm searching from Toronto, Canada. Why did this come up? Probably because there's something wrong with their keyword targeting settings. We didn't discuss this in detail because it's just, there's so much to talk about, but another way that you would want to limit who sees your ads is by geography, and you can show ads only to people in certain locations. It seems like they didn't turn that on probably. So clearly some issues, some of these people, but I think you get the idea. Again, going back to ad copy, the necessity of testing. You will not know which ads are going to perform until you test them in every combination possible. Write out 10, 20 headlines and 10, 20 of these shorter descriptions, and then basically just put them all together, or as Google Ads now does it, most of that testing automatically. You can then find out what actually appeals to the people you're targeting and what doesn't. We found through our experimentation that it really depends on your market. People in certain industries like to see certain language. Maybe it's jargon, maybe it's just a way of speaking. And to other people, it doesn't work. So it's going to be specific to, your business, and you need to try as many different combinations as possible to see what works. And typically you're doing it at the same time as you're testing keywords. The last concept, something I thought I should mention, is keyword insertion. So this is an interesting technique, and again, kind of complicated, but the idea here is that instead of writing ads that, are sort of generic in nature, meaning they don't speak specifically to what the person was searching, you can kind of use what's called keyword insertion, so that Google kind of takes part of your search and inserts it into the headline. So in this case, if they search for dark chocolate bar, you can use this term you can use this keyword insertion tool to put in the words dark chocolate, or someone searches sugar-free chocolate, buy sugar-free chocolate. You can see this can be quite powerful because you can get really personalized ads. As an example, this is a company that's clearly clearly competing for the words finance headhunter, but they're not using keyword insertion. And so when I add a term like New York, I don't see that in the headline. But imagine if it said Headhunter Services New York, I would instantly think, okay, this is a business that works in my area. And that would be a really, powerful way of improving these ads. Same with all of these, Recruiter Chicago, but you don't see that term anywhere used. So I don't know if are they the right person for me, right? I quickly scroll down and I see Sales Recruiter Chicago, and I see, businesses with a recruiting an address in Chicago and all these other local businesses. Now I'm certain these are the right ones, but of course this is a totally different topic of SEO. So you really can use this quite effectively to make really personalized ads without having to write an ad for every single city or every single sub industry you work in. And that can be quite powerful. So all right, the next thing, someone's going to click on your ad. Hopefully it's a new client lead, and they're going to end up on a landing page that you've designated, right? And what do we want there? We want to demonstrate credibility and value as quickly as possible. Why quickly? Because people do not give you a great opportunity here. They clicked an ad. There's no commitment to you. They don't care if your website sucks. They're going back to the search results and continuing. If it's good, they're going to look around, but you got to convince them it's good very fast. So there's a lot of things that a landing page should have on it or could have on it. And we'll talk about some of them, now. Probably not going to get too in depth on some of these topics, but it's good to know what to think about. So the first is message match. So what does message match means? Well, it's essentially that you want your messaging on the page to match the ad copy that you had on that person clicked on. So for example, if I click manufacturing recruiters, good message match here is that I'm going to a page directly on manufacturing recruiters. This page may have its own issues, but at least I'm clearly, still on a business page that's talking about executive search. Axe recruiting here, now it's sort of, the message matches are right, recruit top B2B salespeople, but what if I wasn't looking for a B2B salesperson? Like, what if that wasn't my intention? So, there's sort of reduced message match here. Headhunter Philadelphia, let's go to Recruiter Chicago. I click the ad, but I'm now on this random page, right? Like, is there a message match here? Probably not. So you really need to figure out how to make your landing pages speak as clearly as possible to the same search term and the same ads that people were searching for and then reading. So that's really important. And you can do it with a few different ways. One is you can create individual landing pages for every sort of search category key grouping you have. You can also use what are called parameters to kind of insert text into the page as the page loads. So it's kind of like this keyword insertion idea, but for a landing page. Single focus. So there are virtually no landing pages that do this well in the world of recruiting, which is quite surprising, but we'll show you a couple that are pretty good. But a single focus is basically saying, what do you want? The landing page needs to have a person doing one specific thing, encourage them to take one specific action. And in order to do that, you can't give the people a million options. So on this page, what do I want them to do? Do I want them to click featured candidates, featured jobs? I want them to send an email, call this person, start exploring the website, go to my social media profiles? Probably not. I probably want them to just fill out this form, but are they going to? Maybe or maybe not, because I've given them a million other things to click on. So a landing page should have be self-contained and have one goal. That goal is probably going to be getting someone to book a consultation with you. It depends obviously on your goal, but that needs to be made very clear to people, and that needs to be the clear focus of the page. This landing page is a little bit clearer. So like they still, I think, shouldn't be offering all these other options up here, but at least they're trying to sort of segment people, which I think is great. And then encouraging someone to talk. Is this perfect? No, but at least it's sort of on the right track. And you can see, here, there's another example. They're asking you right up front. They know what they want you to do. They want you to fill the salespeople. I think this form's a little bit aggressive. They haven't really made their pitch yet, but at least again, they're asking for one thing for the most part. You probably shouldn't have all these other options up here, because what do people do? They start exploring the website. They kind of forgot why they were there. So everything about your business needs to be self-contained within this landing page. It's not actually that hard to do either. Client logos. So here's an example where people are trying to essentially demonstrate their value by showing who they work with, and this can be very powerful. You don't really have it's hard to convince people why you're good at what you do, and using other people who sort of have worked with you as proof is really, can be quite effective. And you'll see that a lot of these different landing pages use similar tactics. I don't particularly like this one because there's a lot of scrolling and it doesn't really say, there's no headline, it should say something like, look at, here are the companies we've worked with, but you get the general idea. Written and video testimonials are other example of social proof, which is kind of the general name for this type of section on a site. You want to obviously, again, use testimonials from people who are within your industry who have said good things about you. If you can get someone to record a video, even better. We have some of our clients who are able to do that. Case studies can also work, right? Showing people the specific success you've had in their industry with as many details as possible that are relevant. That can be pretty powerful. Resources, this is a little bit tricky because as I said, you don't want people to kind of deviate too much from what their original intention was in coming to your site. But, resources can be a way of obviously showing off, the value you can bring and showing that you're like educated within an industry. Also, if someone downloads something, they may, you should have their contact information and you can proceed with follow-up, which we'll talk about in a second. Relevant statistics, again, like on this site, whether these statistics are great, probably not, but these are the ideas that show that you're thinking about things from a analytical perspective. Oftentimes these statistics can be a little bit more focused on the benefits you bring to the client rather than these types of statistics, but the idea there is really just to show that you have thought about some of these challenges that they're facing in depth. And calendar booking. So, this is something that none of these examples do well. There's a lot of forms to fill out and sort of a promise to get back to somebody at a later date. But really, that's a huge friction point. If somebody wants to talk to you, obviously give them your phone number. That should be made prominent so they can call you right now if they're interested. But if they want to sort of just book a time, they're willing to wait a little bit. Give them a calendar. Give them an opportunity to do that. Give them a lot of availability as well. And sync it up with your calendar, obviously, to make sure that you don't double book yourself. If you have multiple people in your organization who could take one of those calls, you can sync multiple people's calendars together. Gives you much greater availability. So this landing page, it needs to do a lot. It needs to have a lot of different sort of ideas contained within it. Then you can definitely, to fulfill your goal, which is booking those, initial calls with people. So what do you do next? So I think a lot of recruiters, from my experience, they kind of end their discussion. I booked the call, great. But what happens from there, right? Well, some people cancel the call. Some people don't pick up the call. Some people, it goes to their voicemail and you never hear back from them. A lot of recruiters give up at that point and they say, oh, that was a shitty lead. That's not really the best approach, right? So what you need to do is think about how can you, maximize the percentage of people that you actually get into your sales process with. And before we even actually think about, the people who don't, say, respond to you, you can think a little bit about how do you get more people to actually start that conversation with you? So first, obviously, the calendar booking is a big one. So giving people the ability to book right away at a time that's convenient for them, but also following up with them prior to the call, using a system that sends automated reminders to them, telling them, hey, thanks for booking, an hour before, your call's in an hour. At the time of the call, your call's right now, using text messages to send those automated messages as well. It's important just to stay engaged with people. It also just demonstrates to people that you are somebody who has their, for lack of a better word, shit together. A lot of recruiters are flaky and don't really follow through. So it's important that you demonstrate the opposite. Obviously, most of these are going to be followed up with phone calls, but having, that's nothing new here, but having like a tool that can help you track who you've called and when you may want to try again is something that's pretty critical. I mean, you're going to be paying, $50 for some of these leads, right? Like if you're just going to make one call and give up, like it's not going to be a cost-effective way to spend your money. So really, like having systems in place to do that can be really helpful. Text messages, again, is really important too. Lots of people respond to text. A lot of people who are giving your phone numbers here are going to give you their cell. You may not know that, and so you may end up texting a landline, but that's fine. Like there's ways of handling that. But you want to have as many touch points with people as possible, and you want to make sure that you use text messages effectively. And the last thing is email funnels. When you sign people up or when you book a call, as I said, some people, no matter what you do all these things properly, they're not going to pick up your phone call. They're not going to, respond to your texts. And, as I said, a lot of people say, that's a shitty lead. I wish they hadn't bothered wasting my time. The thing is, though, some of them are shitty leads. There's no question why they signed up for calls they have no intention of taking. I mean, we all kind of know that we change our mind. But there's some people who, maybe they were looking for a candidate, and then they happened to get one that day, or maybe they were just sort of setting something up in case something fell through. There's all these different reasons people might not show up, and they're not all because the person wasn't serious at all. So having someone put them into an email funnel, just continually nurturing that over time, can generate pretty significant improvements in your success rate over the long run. I know there's obviously a belief that Google Ads should generate immediate leads, and that is obviously the primary purpose of it. But if you think about the secondary value that it can provide, you will get a lot more out of it. So now I'm going to stop the screen sharing, and I'm going to allow people to unmute themselves. So give me 1 second, and if you do have any questions about anything I've said, feel free to speak up. We may see if I'm not sure how many people are going to want to talk, but just hopefully won't have too much issues with people speaking over each other. All right. So you can now unmute yourself if you want to, and see if there's any questions. You can also type it in the chat. All right. Anyone? If there are no questions, that's also fine. Someone just confirm. I'm hoping people can hear me, given I. Hello? Yeah.
Hey, Zach, it's Debbie.
Hi, Debbie.
Can you give us a rough idea of what running a Google ad campaign might cost?
Yeah, sure. So that's a tricky question because it's so dependent on the region, like the size of the geographic area you're targeting, and the specific industries or practice areas you're targeting. So what I can say is this, targeting a large city in one practice area is probably going to cost you about $500 a month. But, I would imagine, we have clients who are spending up to that's not true, right? Probably right now about $3,000 a month. If you were to go broadly across the country in a large industry, let's say manufacturing or, nursing, you could be spending, up to ten to $20,000. So it really is a hard question to answer. I will say that the average cost per click, so how much does Google charge you when someone clicks your ad, ranges between $2 to $10. And if you have a really optimized campaign, you can get about, 10 roughly 10% of people who to like fill out your form and generate, what would be a lead for you. So, the cost per lead there comes out to between $20 to $100. And then of course the success rate, the quality of those leads really depends a lot on your sales process and your follow-up process. So, we're trying to obviously generate leads for, you know, minimize the cost per click, minimize the clicks from people who aren't the right target market, minimize people who fill out the form who are not really good leads. But that really does impact the cost quite a bit. I would imagine that if you looked at the cost for some of these campaigns that were sort of had roughly the same goals, you could see a spread probably of 5 to 10 times, because some of them are very clearly poorly optimized, whereas some are a lot better. So it's another reason why you want to obviously get all these things right, is to keep your costs down. Alex, you've got a question. How do you insert dynamic tags in Google Ads? Do you mean like this dynamic insertion? Is that the question, Alex? Cities? Yeah, I mean, cities are the same way, right? So there's a lot more, Google topics about this. If you kind of click through, you'll see all the different variations. But the idea is that your ad text, instead of saying like buy chocolate just written normally, it says buy keyword : chocolate, like this, and that would be something like, in your case, a recruiter, like the name of a city. So if your headline's going to be recruiting in Chicago, it would say keyword Chicago. It's a complicated topic, not something I can easily explain here. But if you do search, search for keyword and search in Google Ads, you'll probably find quite a few sort of walkthroughs, probably, as well as some videos that will go into more depth. You also have to think about this from responsive ads. So responsive ads is a new Google Ads concept where businesses are able to test multiple different headlines and descriptions at once. And those are, can be pretty effective ways of testing out certain concepts. Okay. Anyone else? Any other questions? Okay. Well, if no one has any other questions, that's great. If you do have any questions after this, you can definitely send them to me over email, Zach at ZACK@talentheromedia.com. And also, you can also join our Facebook group, which is now open to anyone, no charge. And the name of that group, actually, I'm just going to copy and paste the URL into the chat if you want to join. Give me 1 second, and that would be another way you can kind of ask questions. I'm going to post a link to this webinar in there as well. See if we can get a discussion started. And then, of course, if you do want to hire us for this service, we can also discuss that as well separately. So here is the chat. I'm going to leave that open for a second. Otherwise, thank you very much all for joining. And I hope you've sort of found this useful. Have a good rest of your day.